And I learned about faith, but also about life, you know, the embeddedness of culture as far as what our identities are and what, you know, how weird other people are and how weird they think we are, what that really means.
I was on sabbatical in Xi'an last fall, and I did China, Western China, Eastern Tibet the year before. I was going to set up that sabbatical, and so we took the whole gang for 4 months.
And you said with your children, so you have 3 children, and who was there?
So a college-age kid, she came late November, was there 6 or 7 weeks. And then our other 2 kids, 17, senior in high school, and then 12, seventh grader. She assimilated, she went to school, she played the piano at our neighbor's house, she skated at the mall skating rink. Her life kind of continued, and then her social group through school really was, she had little buddies coming over, and you know, so she interacted and grew, both as speaking Chinese but also helping her friends learn to speak English. 17, senior in high school, and then kids in her peer group are not available, period. They go to school at 8 in the morning, they come home at 6, they eat something, they do homework till midnight, and then they get up at 6 and they do it again. And they do that 6 days a week, 46 weeks out of the year, whatever it is. And then they have July and August off, but they're given homework at the end of June that they have to do to keep them busy July and August, so when they come back September 1st, they have no life. And so we tried 20 different ways to find ways for her to connect with kids her age. And we struck out completely. We had one kid lined up, and then her parents found a special super duper SAT course for her that would take all of her Sundays for the next 6 months. So these kids have absolutely no life. But anyway, that's the entire life focus is education, 2 sets of grandparents, 2 parents, all for this one kid to get a perfect score on that test so that their life goes forward. And that's July 1st is then the day where you get your score.
Put it in historical context. Tell us a little bit about the historical context.
It's the Confucian system, which is ancient in China, and it's everybody, I mean, it's, talk about an ingrained piece of culture, it would be this ingrained piece of culture where there was this very much an educated class that, and the way you got to be in that class was through this exam system, and it was a very rigorous examination system. So it wouldn't be unusual to those kids, it's probably almost in their DNA at this point, that you sit for these big exams. And so to be in that whole, you know, that before the Communist Party time, when in the whole Confucian system, where the people who were the government, you know, where everybody did it. If you had any wealth at all, you did your education, you sat for the exam, and you either went on or you didn't.
Chinese dream was more long. It lasted for, you know, more than 1,000 years, and as a result, since anybody could sit for this exam, there were stories where there would be villages that would pool their resources if they had a particularly gifted young man to make it possible for him to take the exam. Because then, the greatest of the great is to, if you pass the exam, wasn't you went on to further study, you went into the government. And that's one of the possible explanations for why China kind of fizzled at the in modern times. See, this is one of the puzzling things, because here China was way ahead of the West on all kinds of stuff. You know, as far as an exam system, I mean, for culture, with art, with technology, with medicine, all kinds of stuff, way up there. And then kind of when the Industrial Revolution kind of was kicking up in the West, China just didn't do anything. It just got stuck. And there's some theories about it. One of them I think is convincing, which is there was no entrepreneurial class. That if you made it, what was it? You went into the government in order to maintain the status quo. But anyway, to understand and so that during the communist era, one of the reasons for theory is they eliminated the Confucian examination system, I believe, in 1909. And the reason for it was that they were their butts were getting kicked because of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of imperialism. You know, China was dragged into the modern world. They didn't want to be in it. So the Chinese, I mean, the British, you know, sent gunboats down the Yangtze and took over Hong Kong, and then they kind of forced China to open up. that because the Confucian examination content did not address science and technology, and what they saw was the reason why they had fallen behind, they said that the exam system should go out the window. So they just got rid of the exams altogether instead of replacing them. And that Mao was in the first class of young men that would have sat for the exam and didn't. So the scoundrels even, the really bright young men who were even troublemakers, tended to go through this and would often rise to the top. So that's one of the reasons for the kind of things falling apart in the 20th century in China, because they got rid of the Confucian examination system. And obviously what? They've had a 50-year break, and what happened? It's back with a vengeance. And now it's with both boys and girls. And as you said, with the one child policy, the pressure for one child to be a success.
Because of the disproportionate male to female preference, that within 10 years there will be more what are referred to as bare branches, males for which there are not females in China, than there are all collective males of the same age within the United States. So what you've got is this, you know,
Bare branches, what a great line.
yeah. So if you're talking about one man, one person who's responsible for his parents and his grandparents, who will be responsible for him if there is not a way?
The main gist, however, in the last 25 years is that the standard of living has improved remarkably. I may have told some of you before that my honorary Chinese mother, Mrs. Wu, comes from a very distinguished Chinese family, very privileged family actually, told me that every Chinese has a relative within their extended family that died of hunger.